The strangest part about walking the flight line at a modern airport is not the staggering cost of the aircraft. It is the absolute terrifying fragility of them. We are surrounded by million-dollar fiberglass shells, governed by delicate microchips, and glued together with composite resins. They are built for doctors and executives flying on sunny weekends. But hiding in the dark corners of those same hangars are the ghosts of a different era. Machines forged when the United States government opened an infinite checkbook to build hardware that could survive kinetic warfare. The public has been lied to. They believe owning a warbird means you need the bank account of a billionaire to buy a P-51 Mustang. They completely miss the liaison fleets. The forward air controllers, the primary trainers, the military-industrial offcasts that the government dumped onto the civilian market for pennies on the dollar. Today, we are looking at the ultimate asymmetric engineering advantage. We are stripping the paint off machines built to take bullets, drop smoke, and train 18-year-olds for global combat, machines that you can park in your garage for the price of a used pickup truck. These are 5 military-spec planes you can actually afford, built for war, sold to civilians. But there is a catch. What happens to a civilian pilot when they take the controls of a machine that refuses to hold their hand and was designed for a battlefield that no longer exists? The War Assets Administration, WAA for short, was not some polite government office shuffling paperwork. It was a liquidation crew with a $40 billion problem. The war was over, and the United States found itself drowning in hardware. Not just rifles and boots, but entire mountains of aircraft, tens of thousands. Fighters, trainers, liaison birds, all lined up in the desert sun, burning through taxpayer money just by sitting there. Congress did not want a slow, careful process. They wanted it done yesterday. The Surplus Property Act of 1944 gave the WAA its marching orders. Get rid of it. Planes, trucks, engines, even the tools that built them. The statute did not mince words. Anything sitting on a government lot was to be converted to civilian use or scrapped fast. Aircraft in the United States and its territories, all up for grabs. If you could fog a mirror and sign a check, you could buy a piece of the arsenal of democracy. $40 billion worth, if you believe the official numbers. That is not a typo. By 1946, WAA was trying to unload everything from B-17s to Stearmans for pennies on the dollar. The government was hemorrhaging cash just storing them every day those airframes sat on the ramp. It cost more to keep the lights on than most Americans made in a year. So the WAA set up a fire sale, auctions, sealed bids, lot numbers that read like bingo cards. One lot might be 50 T-6 Texans, another 100 PT-17s. The logic was not about value, it was about velocity. Move the inventory, clear the fields, get the aluminum back into the economy or into the hands of anyone willing to take on the burden. There were policy memos, sure, but the real policy was speed. The longer these planes sat, the more they rotted. The more they rotted, the less they were worth. And the public, they were hungry. Flight schools, ranchers, crop dusters, even teenagers with enough savings could walk away with an airplane built to survive a war. You want to talk about urgency? Picture the boneyards, endless rows of wings and fuselages, canopies fogged with dust, engines dripping oil into the sand. That was what the WAA was up against. The mission was not to preserve history, it was to empty the shelves, no matter what it took. And that is how you end up with a world where a machine built for the front lines winds up parked behind a hardware store in Nebraska, waiting for its next life. You want to know what disbelief looks like? Go dig up an old Life magazine from 1946. Page after page, black and white photos of boneyards so vast you would swear they were faked. Miles of wings, tail to nose, canopies fogged over with dust, tires slowly melting into the Arizona sand. The government called it surplus disposal. The public called it a crime. Editorials in the New York Times and the Chicago Tribune ran phrases like national treasure, sold by the pound. You think people today get worked up about waste? Try 1946, when the front page ran headlines like "Bargain Bombers for Barnstormers" and "Your Tax Dollars Up in Smoke." People lined up by the thousands at Davis-Monthan, Walnut Ridge, Kingman. Not to buy, just to gawk. Families brought picnic lunches to watch the auctions. One reporter counted 8,000 onlookers at a single Arkansas sale, all craning their necks for a glimpse of the auctioneer rattling off lot numbers. 50 T-6 Texans, next up, no reserve. Some folks cheered when the hammer dropped, others just stood there, slack-jawed, watching a machine that once cost the government $60,000 go for less than a new pickup truck. You could buy a PT-17 Stearman for $1,800 if you had the nerve, or a T-6 for $2,500, about 4% of what Uncle Sam paid North American to build it. The press had a field day. "Government planes auctioned like junk," screamed one editorial. Another called it the Great Aluminum Giveaway. There were stories about teenagers pooling lawn mowing money to buy a warbird, or crop dusters snapping up L-birds by the dozen. And behind every headline, a photo. Endless rows of trainers, wings drooping, oil stains spreading under the sand, propellers chained together like prisoners on death row. It is easy to feel righteous now, but back then there was real outrage. Letters to Congress, demands for investigations. The War Assets Administration shrugged it off. Policy was policy. Clear the lots, empty the treasury, let the public sort out what survives. The spectacle was not just about cheap planes. It was about watching the arsenal of democracy get sliced up and sold off piece by piece to whoever showed up with a checkbook. That is the kind of visual shock you do not forget. And if you think that is just nostalgia, you have never stood in a boneyard at noon, listening to the wind rattle through 1,000 empty cockpits. Run a hand along the spar of a T-6 Texan and you will feel the difference. 2024. T3 aluminum, thick as a wrist, cold riveted in rows so tight they look more like bridge work than aviation. North American's engineers gave these wings dual spars, a semi-monocoque structure, and a 30% safety margin over the design load. That is not marketing. That is what lets a T-6 take a hard landing, blow a tire, scrape metal, and still fly home. Try that with a composite trainer and you will be combing the field for shards. Rivets on these warbirds are not just fasteners, they are a signature. The T-6 and the old Stearman. PT-17 both wear them in dense C patterns, each one torqued by hand on the line in 1943. The Stearman's wings are a cage with two interlocking spars, steel tube struts, and spar caps of 6.61 T6. They built them for kids who had never left the ground, and they built them to survive the worst day you could imagine. Rip half the fabric off a Stearman, punch a hole through the root, and it will still hold. Heavy controls? That is not a flaw. That is assurance. Light controls are for kites. Cessna's Bird Dog went with a single spar, but do not mistake that for weakness. Its stressed skin wing, again 2024 T3, has reinforced leading edges for jungle strips and rocket runs. The fuselage is extruded longerons, not a scrap of wasted metal. Beechcraft's T-34 Mentor looks like a bonanza, but inside it is all military, monocoque fuselage, stressed skin wings, low wing for roll rate, every bolt biting into alloy built for war. Dragging a Mentor wing across the shop floor, you feel every ounce, nothing extra, nothing missing. Oleo struts rated for 1,250 pounds vertical load. That is so, a student can drop it from 20 feet and the gear just shrugs. Modern trainers would hand you a repair bill. These, they hand you a story. 70 to 80 years on, these birds still fly. Not magic, metallurgy. Overbuild born of necessity, where a rib that failed stress went back to the lathe, no questions. That is military-spec. It is the reason these airframes outlast patience, oil, and sometimes even their pilots. Step into a T-6 Texan and you meet torque, face to face. The Pratt & Whitney R1340 up front does not just pull you forward, it tries to twist the whole airframe out from under you. Torque is not a number in a manual. It is a force you feel in your bones, a reminder that this is a war machine, not a weekend toy. Get careless with the throttle or lazy with your feet, and the T-6 will shove you sideways before you are even airborne. That is not a warning. It is a fact. The Army Air Forces learned it the hard way. In 1944 and 1945, 27 cadets died in T-6 stalls, 27 young men who never saw the ground coming. The reports are blunt: a sharp pull at 150 knots, a wing loading that snaps past safe, and suddenly the airplane is not flying anymore. It is tumbling, spinning, and there is no time to recover. Full forward stick, full power. None of it matters if you are behind the airplane. You are not flying a forgiving trainer, you are wrestling a machine built for combat, one that punishes hesitation and arrogance without mercy. Some pilots complain about heavy controls, about the T-6 wearing them out. That is the point. Every movement is real: steel cables, solid rods, control surfaces built to take hits and keep going. Light controls belong to civilian trainers, not to a plane that expects you to fight for every inch of sky. The T-6 does not care about your comfort, it cares about discipline. Ignore the talk and you will pay. The R-1340 will roll you off the runway if you get sloppy. Ground loops, bent landing gear, broken props, these are not rare accidents. They are the price of complacency. The T-6 is overbuilt, yes, but it is not indestructible. It is stronger than you, and it will prove it if you let your guard down. If you want stability, if you want an airplane that forgives your mistakes, you are looking for the next chapter, the liaison planes, the bird dogs. The T-6 is not that. Here, respect is not optional, it is survival. Flying a bird dog at treetop height over the Mekong, engine droning, the backseat observer calling in artillery, then seeing that same airframe parked behind a ranch house in Idaho. The O-1 Bird Dog, once the L-19, was never about comfort. It was built to loiter at 300 feet, circle for hours, and take hits. After-action reports tell the story: pilots patching bullet holes with speed tape, then flying again before the oil cooled. In 1972, one bird dog took a round through the wing route, lost half its fuel, limped home, got a new tank, and was airborne at sunrise. Try that with a plastic trainer. No shortcuts in its build: 2024 T3 aluminum, stressed skin monocoque, extruded longerons. Landing gear designed for rice paddies, gravel bars, cow pastures. They've touched down in mud that would swallow a Cessna 172. The controls are light but forgiving. Drag a wingtip through weeds and still pull out. It is not a sports car, it is a tractor with wings. Ranchers appreciate the low stall speed, wide view, and a cockpit you can hose out after a day chasing calves. There is a rancher in Idaho, a former forward air controller, who bought his bird dog at auction, N19002. He uses it for cattle, fence checks, and aerial photos. He says it is the most honest plane he has flown. You patch the leading edge with a rivet strip and a fresh sheet, and you are back in the air before lunch. That is why these airframes still work, 7 decades on. Meanwhile, modern composite trainers sit idle, waiting for software updates. The bird dog just wants oil, avgas, and a reason to fly. Out west, it circles slow over a herd, engine ticking, owner leaning out with binoculars. War machine turned ranch hand, just wind and the soft tick of cooling metal. Step into a T-34 Mentor, and the first thing you notice is the comfort. Leather seats, light controls, tricycle gear, nothing about it feels like a relic. For flight academies, it is the perfect pitch, a warbird that does not punish its students. But comfort in aviation is never free. In 2004, the FAA issued Airworthiness Directive 2004-0802, a mandate that landed with the weight of a ledger. Every T-34 now required ultrasonic inspection of the wing lower spar caps, every 500 hours or 12 months, whichever came first. Not a quick check, but a full teardown, searching for fatigue cracks that could be decades old. Miss a crack, and the penalty is not just a grounded airplane, it is a missing wing, or worse. The cause is fatigue. These mentors were built to take abuse, training Navy and Air Force pilots for thousands of hours. But even the best steel has limits. After 5,000 hours, the spar's life is up, unless you install a life extension kit, reinforcement doublers, splice plates, 100 hylocks torqued to specification. The kit buys another 5,000 hours, maybe 12,000 with luck and vigilance, but it comes at a price that rivals a used car, and the labor is a marathon. Owners grit their teeth and pay, knowing the alternative is far worse. So the T-34's luxury comes with a hidden tax. The very engineering that makes it smooth and civilized is exactly what keeps regulators alert, combing through service bulletins, chasing cracks that hide beneath polished skin. The cost of flying a warbird with manners is not just in the purchase, it is in the maintenance, paid hour by hour, inspection by inspection. You want a cheap ticket into the warbird world? Fine. Forget the T-6, forget the Stearman. Look at the Piper L4. That is the military cub, and you could snag one for less than a used Harley back when the WAA was cleaning house. I knew a guy in California who did agricultural survey work. He had an L4 he had picked up for $1,600 out of surplus. He bolted on a Continental O-200, swapped the old wood prop for something that did not vibrate itself to splinters, and just flew. 4 gallons an hour, that is all it took. You burn more gas mowing a big lawn. No radios, just a map and a pencil. He would buzz fields at sunrise, check irrigation, mark notes on the window with a grease pencil. That is what entry-level looks like. No chrome, no glass cockpit, just tube, fabric, and a little faith in your own hands. And for a while, you think you have beaten the system. You think you have found the loophole. But hold on to that feeling. It does not last. You want to own a warbird? Fine. Get out your checkbook and a calculator. The T-6 Texan burns 22 gallons an hour, minimum. That is avgas, not unleaded. Do the math at $6 a gallon and see how fast your wallet starts bleeding. Oil. A quart every hour, sometimes more if you are running her hard. Do not even think about stretching those overhaul intervals. The FAA says 1,200 hours on the R1340, but any mechanic who is honest will tell you to budget for a teardown at 1,000. And that is if you can find parts that are not counterfeit. The NTSB flagged a batch of fake magnetos last year. They looked good, but failed at altitude and nearly killed a formation pilot. Insurance? $2,000 a year for a T-6 Texan, and that is if you have a clean record and a hangar. Forget to check your serial numbers, buy a prop hub off the wrong guy online, and you could be flying a time bomb. That is the arithmetic. Cheap to buy, expensive to keep. You want a piece of history? Figure this out first. You want to know what it costs to own one of these? Not just in dollars. Forget the auction price. I'm talking quarts of oil, bruised knuckles, and every damn muscle in your back after a crosswind landing. These planes do not care about your comfort. They were built to outlive the mission. Question is, can we still build anything that will outlive us? Go ahead, argue in the comments. I'll be reading.